This episode of Arrays of Living discusses in recovery. In recovery is a term or language typically used related to corrective actions for various negative conditions or behaviors such as addictions. However, I consider the term can apply to all of us. And for life circumstances we've come to expect or take for granted. So at this point, I am probably getting from Minnie, say what? Or, what are you talking about, Willis? For those responses, all I can do is ask you to bear with me as I expand on my thoughts around this. Typically thinking of things in atypical ways, and I recognize that a few examples may help. If you've ever lost a business, you are in recovery. Think about it. It hits like a sledgehammer. Am I wrong? I know it's a new perspective for an old term, and I know that that term is made to have negative associations of correcting something wrong or flawed in with us. But let's be honest though. Let's really be honest. Many life situations are things that heighten our emotions, that break us apart, or take familiar things away. Here's another example. If you've lost a loved one, you're in recovery. Life took someone familiar away. And the grieving is an emotional response we all need to get past. We are in recovery. If you've lost a marriage, or if that one didn't work, think about this. If you've lost a marriage or a committed relationship or a long-standing friendship, you're in recovery. Because you mourn the loss of the familiarity, the routines. You have to recover from those. It's like sometimes feels like you've lost one of your limbs, or what I imagine losing one of your limbs might be like. You are in recovery. And many life situations, such as those called out, put us in a recovery mode. Just pause a minute and think about it. And I, for one, am familiar with these situations. Years ago, we lost a extended family matriarch. Dada, we called him. And that put me in a recovery mode. And I know that I didn't have a chance to properly deal with the separation of my spouse at the time it occurred. I did not have a chance to do that. After all, I had 4 mouths to feed and 4 sets of eyes looking at me for guidance, for stability again. And I had to focus on their overall well-being, all of them, and any emotional hits that they might have taken from the marriage going south. Even I needed support to properly cope and get through each day. That is where my Nanny McPhee, I literally experienced a real-life Nanny McPhee, Linda, came to the rescue. And I urge you to listen to season 1's podcast episode, Live 06 at the time. That's what we were naming them, Live 06. One Life Fully Lived, my angel, my McPhee, to get the insights into that life moment for me and what that was all about. Because Linda truly was a saving grace. Where I had to put my own needs aside and cope with being a single mother. Oh my God, something I never saw for myself. I had to deal with that. That was one of the impacts from my broken marriage. And yes, I was in recovery. My mindset back then was different. And it was based on societal conditioning and abstracts for broken relationships. And today, I now understand I was in recovery. And had I had this lens then, all my responses would have differed. But in today's mindset, it's that I would have dealt with my emotions. And I would have been more transparent with my feelings then. I would have cried. I would have raged. I would have openly discussed the loss of companionship and intimacy. And I would have celebrated the recouped freedom. And nobody out there who has, had a broken relationship, friendship, marriage, especially the marriage, there's also the side of recouped freedom. And that's something to celebrate. So nobody come telling me that they don't have that side. Because if it is, they're putting their focus entirely on the negative side of it. But there's also an upside of it to have recouped freedom. And there's also the part to celebrate the next chapter opportunities. And I can tell you there are many. There are many. So there is loss and there's celebration. And I myself, speaking for myself, did not give myself the room and the permission to deal with those feelings. Looking back, I needed it. And I now know my children needed that. But thankfully, our family has, my immediate family has, the kind of relationships where we can openly and honestly share our perspectives of the past. And in true dealing with the past fashion, dealing with it the right way, we learn from them. We get the lessons from them and can hear and learn the impacts felt by all. And we can still move forward, leading with love for all of us, for ourselves as individuals, and for the situation itself. So let me ask you this. What recovery or recoveries are you in that you didn't consider you were in within the context of a recovery state? And in case you missed that, I'm going to ask it again because it's really important. What recovery or recoveries, because they can be more than one, are you in that you didn't consider you were in before this episode within the context of a recovery state? And when thinking of those situations, one or many, from a frame of recovery, what changes would you make in the approach and the response that of then? What hindsights come to mind? Does this change perspective change things for you? Because it certainly did for me, and that's why I'm speaking about it on the podcast. In recovery episode of this podcast is really about sensitizing all of us, you, me, all of us, to the fact that our pains, griefs, hurts, and disappointments, and even the betrayals trigger the need to recover. And that means putting new tools and resources in place to better cope and function with the loss and the impacts. In recovery is about giving ourselves grace to feel what we feel at the moment we feel it, and know that those emotions and how they feel are valid, and that recovery is a process. Putting the right lens to the situation makes it easier to decide next, and it minimizes our ability to brush aside the critical support we will need. Because it really is about supporting you through it. It really is a lens of self-awareness. It is a lens of self-love. On the opposite side, thinking of grief, for example, as mourning, does not strongly resonate an actionable need. It suggests we sit there and we mope and it's okay to, lie down, think about it, go to the funeral, get together, have good memories, then, feel bad and keep feeling bad. It's not an actionable need to say, how do I recover from this? I know if I lost my mom, there would be a massive void and I would be in recovery, and I have to start thinking, how do I recover from this? How do I cope? What do I need to have in place? What things do I need to do to better cope with that void? Because it's not a void that necessarily will go away. And that's the other thing. Some in recovery states are perpetual. So you have to put things in place to grow. Then something might trigger it. You then deal with it. You grow again. There's all sorts of things. And yet the guidance typical for these types of situations is to take a few days for the loss and a few hours for the funeral and time here and there for the divorce to unfold. After that, you should be good to function despite the impacts. And many of us go through the routines and motions expected of us. We don't know how to go and say, no, I need more time, or I'm having a hard time with this. We just cover up. We put on some veils. We put on our facade and we go out and say, oh, we're not too bad. It's hard. It's this, but we're not too bad. We'll cope. That time we're broken inside. We're shredded inside. We're hurting inside. And we need to deal with that. We create convincing facades, and they're so convincing. And over time, we lose track of the shites associated with those life episodes, never really dealing effectively with them. But here's the thing. When we push those important feelings aside, the energy still has to go somewhere. And usually it gets internalized and it causes havoc with our wellness. In my broken marriage example, I ended up with high blood pressure. And I now know it could have been worse. So I'm really grateful that's all I got. Changing the perspective to one of needing recovery properly sets our focus to drive the actions to recover from the state or mode we've been placed in. Case in point, I'm recovering from it all. I really, really am. I'm recovering from it all. Every day is a day to celebrate. And I've come a long, long, long way. That's why I can have this episode. That's why I can talk to you about it. But there's still some pieces. There's still some pieces to recover from. So I'm in recovery. And when we're in recovery, we get to ask the question, how or what do I need to recover from this? Rather than I'm in it and I only need a short span of time and aloneness to get through my grief or my hurts. Is that really the best or only option? Really? Probably not. So let's get real. At a societal level, you can more readily find recovery programs for addictions, mental health, and even financial situations that could lead to bankruptcy. We know that. There's programs out there. Google it, as they would say. Mental health many times gets framed primarily around depression and anxiety and a few others such as schizophrenia. And I don't want to have people think I have lost track of other mental health conditions. I know there's a lot out there. And yes, there's programs for those. But however, there are many mental health hits we face on a daily basis. Case in point again, example again, I know I had one with the George Floyd situation. I've said it before, I'm saying it again. And I know it deeply disturbed me as a mother, a constituent, as a person of color. Now, some of these, particularly those for addicts, get to hotel in some programs to address symptomatic withdrawals and mental health impacts associated with the conditions. And those are all good and appropriate care. Thank God they exist. I commend it. There needs to be more. Yet other life circumstances that produce similar symptoms, and the message instead is to express condolences and get over it. Where could I go to recover from the mental health hit of George Floyd and, according to society, my blackness? Where do I go to recover from that? This comparison is not to diminish the importance of any circumstance. It's simply to call out that putting a different perspective to some life situations that, yes, absolutely, may seem of lesser urgency, can promote different and better responses. If we saw them in the right way, if we had the right perspective against them, we could actually create different and better responses for them. Even if that response is confined to how we see ourselves and guides us to respond differently and certainly in more positive and actionable ways. It also highlights that from the recovery angle, we can more easily recognize we are vulnerable when in that state, which further reinforces and means our care regime and potentially our interactions should differ. So why discuss this topic at this time of the year, with mere weeks away from the end of the year, with mere weeks away from the festive season, the Merry Christmas season, the happy holidays, and all those things. Why discuss this topic at this time of year? Well, a year is ending and a new one will start. And my lead-up message is to get ahead of ourselves towards creating greater momentum going into the new year. Momentum to better seize opportunities that present themselves. Momentum to have the right pace, to travel through the year and how you need it to go. The time to start is now, before the year ends, especially if you're unhappy, discontent with how this year has gone for you. Are you unfulfilled like I was many years back? Because depending upon what situations you're dealing with, if your approaches are not producing the results you need, or you're in a recovery mode, then why continue in the same way? Find the courage to step out of the ineffective comfort zone you're in and try new ways and approaches. And let me say that again. Are you unfulfilled like I was many years back? Because depending upon what situations you are dealing with now, if your approaches are not producing the results you need, or if you're in a recovery mode, then why continue in the same way? It's like when the friend looks at you and go, so is that working for you? Or how's it working for you? Find the courage, because that's what it takes. Find the courage to step out of the ineffective comfort zone you're in and try new ways and approaches. Strive for new experiences. Thrive for something different. Seek new tools. Seek new resources. Go after what you want and what you need with gumption. Don't do the same old that ain't working. And working with me is one of those viable ways to recovery. It also is a way to address perceived obstacles and highlight your opportunities for growth. Earlier I said I'm recovering from it all because I can't come to you broken to try and help you from your own shites. I got to have my shites clean up. I got to be as whole as I can possibly be, but I got to be able to relate to your circumstances. I got to be able to understand. I got to be able to help you through. And the resources and tools and the credentials and all of this that I have gotten and up-leveled to is not just to say that I have skills, I have expertise. It's to say I can understand and I relate and I went through this and I did this. And I know you can too, and I see your magnificence. I see your brilliance. I see your potentials. Now let me help you get where you need to go. Working with me is a way to address perceived obstacles and highlight your opportunities for growth. Working with me is fostering your ability to move beyond surviving and into thriving. Isn't that what you want for 2023 and beyond? It's certainly what I want for me, and it's certainly what I want for you. With love, I want you to let each second, minute, hour, day, week, month, 2023, or any new year for that matter, take you where you want to be. And if you need help with that, any of that, please reach out using the links in the description. Thank you for listening, and ho, 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 ho. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Thank you for listening to this episode of Arrays of Living. And please be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You will also find in the description below my email address should you want to reach out, and I am happy if you do. And just to be sure, it's jen@youareworthmore.co, and worth more you definitely are. And lastly, also see the link that will allow you to schedule a meet and greet with me. And that's an opportunity for me to meet you and you to meet me, and for us to have a chat and that would be wonderful and welcoming. So please hit the link and let's set up a meet and greet.